Have you ever wanted to make a movie? Thanks to technology, anyone can make a movie today. Filmmaking has become the new garage band. Welcome to Framelines, the show about people making movies.
Framelines is brought to you in part by Sabo Studios, gear for the show. Tape Central, providing your media needs. Production Partners Media, affordable media solutions. And by grants from the Greater Columbus Arts Council and the Ohio Arts Council.
Our featured filmmaker is Jim Leo, a full-time lawyer and part-time director.
So, you came out here just to make one bet.
There's a no-limit blackjack table in a casino up the street. I borrowed everything I could. If I win, I have just enough to get off the hook.
And if you lose?
They burn down my pizza house and kill my best friend.
You better win.
Thanks for the advice.
I knew you had something heavy on your mind. I just didn't know it was that heavy.
I first got into filmmaking about 10 years ago. My wife and I went to a film festival and we saw some shorts on the screen. I said, wow, it'd be really cool to make a short. So I got a cheap video camera for about $500 and probably made the worst short in the history of mankind. It's called The Big Winner. Probably made every mistake you could possibly make when a person makes their first movie. But the one thing I did right was I just did it, which was really kind of cool and fun, and I loved the process. My first feature was a movie called Passing the Bar, about a guy who makes a deal with the devil to pass the bar exam. And not only did I direct it, but I also starred in the lead role, which was kind of a unique experience. Maybe not the smartest thing to do, but it did help me learn a lot. I made fewer mistakes than I did on my first project, but at the end of the day, the movie had some flaws in it, including the acting. Passing the Bar was made in 2005. I did take the bar exam. I kind of know what it's like to really want to pass something really bad. It took about a year to shoot, which is, not ideal. Again, that was one of the things I learned. The crew was essentially 2 people. We did nights and weekends. We were shooting here in Columbus and up in Cleveland, and so we were essentially taking our show on the road. We had to do pickup shots like 6 months later, and one of the characters had a gap in her teeth fixed, so you could kind of spot that. There were times we would start at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'd get home around 3 o'clock at night. And that was just a full day of just being on the go the entire day, and I was like exhausted. But at the same time, I would have like an adrenaline buzz going just because I was so excited. 6 Days is about a pizza maker, Michael Moretti, who is very frustrated with his life. And then through various circumstances, he becomes indebted to the mob for $500,000 and has 6 days to pay off that debt, or they will burn down his pizza house and kill his best friend. A lot of the scenes were shot in downtown Old Westerville, including a chase scene, which is one of the highlights of the movie. It was a very ambitious script, and we got to work with a lot of local actors here in Columbus, Ohio. And the one thing about that movie is everyone was kind of really into upping the ante, doing anything we could to make the movie better. Probably the most ambitious part of 6 Days was shooting a scene in Las Vegas. We actually shot a scene in a casino in Temecula, California, and that was about 4 hours away from Las Vegas. So we did a walk and talk scene in Las Vegas, and we shot those scenes over the course of 3 days. Every scene I was thinking about, well, if this scene doesn't work out and I have to shoot something in Columbus, do I need to tweak the dialogue here or there? Because I knew we weren't coming back if something didn't work out in Vegas. We shot some scenes for 6 days on Lake Erie on a barge. We were lucky enough to find someone who let us shoot on his barge. I took a lot of the things that I learned and I said, well, this is really the way to make a movie a lot better. And one of the things I did when I wrote 6 Days is that I kind of did the editing in my head, in the sense that when I shot Passing the Bar, the running time originally was 100 minutes. It was painfully long in parts, so I trimmed it down to 77 minutes, and it was a lot better. And one of the things I learned is that, just get to the heart of it when you're telling a story. So when I wrote 6 Days, I wanted the story to be really fast in the sense that every scene would be anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes long. anything that didn't really drive the story forward got cut. The main character is an actor named Isaiah Scott. At one point he said to me, I want to do my own stunts, and the chase scene in 6 Days in the script was four sentences long. So when he said that to me, I said, okay, well, let's tweak up this chase scene. So he and I collaborated on it, and we amplified it. And it's about a running time of 2.5 minutes in the movie itself. The lead actress was Betsy Greer. She played Julie, the love interest. I just did an open casting call, and I stumbled upon her, and she fit what I had in the back of my head as far as the Julie character goes. I thought she had very good chemistry with Isaiah, so that was another bonus. The mob boss was played by Rick Napoli. Rick speaks Italian naturally, and I didn't know that when I first picked him for the movie, but there is this scene where the mob boss is speaking in Italian to someone on the phone, and it just so happened that he knows Italian, so we didn't have to teach him how to speak Italian. So it was just kind of a lucky strike. The experience of exhibiting the movie is always kind of intense, because as the director, you want to sit there and you want to watch everyone getting into the movie, but you're also on pins and needles, and every second that passes, you're like on edge, and every joke that's in the script, you're saying, are they going to laugh, are they not going to laugh? So it's a very intense experience. Digital filmmaking made it much more affordable. So that opened the door for me, as it did for many others, and as far as filmmaking in Columbus has grown, I'm just blown away at how much more sophisticated everyone has gotten in their movie making abilities, and I just can't wait to see what the future will bring in Columbus.
Where would the movies be without the theaters? The Drexel Theatre in Bexley, Ohio has been the home for independent films for over 20 years. Let's take a look at the Drexel.
I was a pre-law student at Ohio University way back, and kept seeing all these signs on campus for interesting films. So I started going to these unusual movies, French films, historic American films, classics, films, Godard, Truffaut. And that was my first introduction to films outside of the Hollywood mainstream. And although when I was a kid, I always loved, I spent every Saturday afternoon at the triple feature. Talked my way into a job at the Columbus Museum of Art as their sort of film programmer. Took a fledgling film series that they had started and made it into a series that was selling out weekly on special nights. And from there I went to the Columbus Association for the Performing Arts, was involved with CAPA, the Ohio Theatre movie series, which was one of the most attended and best classic movie series in the country. That led me to thinking about Columbus didn't have an art theater. It didn't have a theater that showed classic Hollywood movies and foreign films and independent films year-round. The Drexel Theater was in my neighborhood or close, and drove by it every day on the way to work, and I finally stopped by and always loved this theater, and talked to the owner. His name was Jerry Knight, and we made a deal for me to take over the business and run the Drexel. And so I owned and operated the Drexel for 29.5 years. In March 2010, I sold the business to the Friends of the Drexel Incorporated, which is a non-profit community organization to continue and keep the Drexel Theater one of the jewels of Columbus and one of the most important art theaters in the country. They're dedicated to that. I'm involved in working as the Director of Operations for the theater. But the Friends of the Drexel put on back in 2010 was a tribute to Josh Radnor, star of the television CBS show How I Met Your Mother, who grew up in Bexley and had just made his first feature film, which was called Happy Thank You, More Please, which had just won the Audience Award for feature films at the Sundance Film Festival. So we were able to get Josh to bring his movie to Columbus, to premiere it here, and to have a gala benefit event with a huge after party, and Josh spoke to the audience, and it was just a fabulous event. Josh wanted to come back and support his hometown theater. Really, the Drexel Theater was the theater he grew up going to. He came to When he was a young boy, he came to see Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn. And these were the films that inspired him to go into both acting and filmmaking.
This is where I fell in love with movies. And have all these people from my life. My 8th grade English teacher's here. I got 2 aunts here. People I went to kindergarten with. It's pretty amazing.
We very much want to reach out and do show films by local filmmakers, regional filmmakers, and the best in independent cinema that we can find. Well, the Drexel Theater is very much, now that it's being operated by the Friends of the Drexel and Kappa, is a mission-driven, community, historic movie theater that will, has both a mission in showing important films that normally wouldn't come to Columbus, showing films and programs that celebrate the history of movies and filmmaking from all over the world, and also educational things about film, both for adults and children. We're, looking at trying to bring in some of the best films we can find from all over the world, and we're trying to reach out and let more people know about that there's more to cinema and filmmaking than just the Hollywood blockbusters. The one-on-one with patrons who come and support this theater and being part of the Drexel, be part of the whole experience of keeping this part of our history alive, because we've lost a lot of our history in Columbus. And at one point Columbus had over 40 or 50 neighborhood theaters, and now they're down to 3. And if we don't support these places, they'll be gone and they won't come back. So that's very important to me, and it's always that, and when the lights go down, to me, is the magic hour, when that instant before the movie hits the screen where you just don't know what it's going to be like, and you have all this anticipation. That's very special.
Scott Spears shows us how to make movies with this filmmaking tip.
Why do you slate? Well, in the old days, you had a separate camera and a separate sound recorder, so it really helped in syncing. Well, a lot of people nowadays are shooting with DSLRs, so you use a separate sound recorder. So the sound of a little clap helps in syncing. The other reason is for record keeping, because those numbers tell the editor this shot belongs to this scene. So scene 1, take 1, that shot belongs to scene 1 or scene 20, etc. How much do slates cost? This slate costs around 40 or 50 bucks. What is the proper way to slate? A lot of people, the first time they go out, they really just hammer it down there. You don't need to hit it that hard. Just let gravity go, boom, because the mic is right off frame. What's the proper time to slate? Well, usually on the set, the procedure is the sound operator rolls. He says he has speed. Then the person will read the slate. This is scene 1, take 1. Camera operator will roll and say speed. And then you say marker and then slap it. And the reason you do that, say marker, is because in syncing, it really helps the editor. He goes, the next sound he's going to hear is the sound of the slate being slapped. The other thing you're going to need to know is where to put the slate. If it's a big close-up of somebody, you'll just probably put it right in front of their face. But if it's a big wide shot, you'll want to take the slate in closer to the camera so the editor can later read the numbers and help them in editing. If it's way back here, the guy in the edit room won't be able to read those numbers and can't sync. Talk to the camera operator about the placement on that. What do you write on the slate? Well, the first thing you want to do is put the title of the production. That way, if the footage, your tape gets lost, your footage gets misplaced, they'll see that and go, oh, that belongs to that production. Then, who the camera op is, who the director is, the date, and is it day, night, is it MOS? Let's talk about the numbering of the slate. You'll want to put the roll number, which is really the tape number, the scene number, and the take number. Your first slate is going to be something like scene 1, take 1. Or if you're starting on scene 20 of your movie, it'll be scene 20, take 1. And as you go through the scene, you're going to add a letter to that. It's going to be 1 apple, then 1 baker, 1 Charlie, and you'll work your way through the alphabet. If you run out of letters, i.e. you get to Z, then you go back to A and you say 1 apple apple, 1 apple baker, so on and so forth. Another thing that may happen is you may have to do a slate at the end of the shot, called a tail slate, because it's physically impossible to get the slate person at the head of the shot. So you're gonna have to tail slate. So that what you do is you go in at the end of the take and say, this is scene 1, take 1. Hold it upside down, say marker, clap it. That says that this slate belongs to the previous footage. And also occasionally when you're shooting shots without sound, you'll forget, oh, I forgot to slate it. Just hold up a slate upside down, and that'll tell the editor this slate belongs to the previous shot. So that kind of wraps up talking about slating. My big pet peeve is if you're running slate on the set, have it ready to go. Don't make everybody stand around while you're frantically writing numbers and letters on a slate.
Framelines went on location for a shoot of Nite Owl Theatre with Fritz the Nite Owl and director Mike McGrainer.
A floating corpse welcomes us to Dementia 13. And behold, now the most frightening image of them all, your voice of the night, Fritz the Nite Owl. And greetings, good groovers. Earth people, 14 viewers standing safely on the banks. We welcome you into an eerie world of axe murderers, drowning, a homicidal maniac, a child killer, and more. So, here's looking at you, Francis. And for you good groovers out there, hope you didn't lose your head during this chapter of Nite Owl Theatre. We gotta keep meeting like this. Same time, same hack. Nite Owl Theatre was on the air before I started, and the Nite Owl was just a cartoon drawing showing what you, the audience, who were the Nite Owls, were supposed to be doing while this movie was on. You were on a date, you were necking on the couch, you were fixing a sandwich, you were getting ready to go to bed.
Growing up, my brother and I would watch Fritz at nights, on the weekend nights on Channel 10. We'd either stay with our grandparents or at our parents' house, but we'd sneak down to watch it. Sleeping bags, popcorn, and Fritz.
I wrote, narrated, acted in movies, training films for the Army. That was like a doctorate in film, TV production. Came back to Columbus, did some part-time work at Channel 10, and the opportunity came up to be a booth announcer at Channel 10, which I took, and then the opportunity to be a movie host. Well, my voice was so well known from radio that when it came time to do the break to lead to the commercial, no one ever said that I couldn't just ad-lib about the movie. So I started ad-libbing about the movies. People saw the little owl cartoon, and they knew my voice from radio, so they started writing letters to Fritz the Nite Owl, and there was no such character at Channel 10. But John Haldy, who was program director then, very creative, imaginative guy, said, let's create a Fritz the Nite Owl character. And after a couple of things, they finally came up with the glasses, which are right off the rack. Added these little masonite things, and he glued broken mirror on the front because they had a starburst filter on the camera, so when the owl's head would move, all of these great starburst flashes would go on.
Fritz allowed us to start a documentary on him, which spawned into this now series. We were trying to match it with the 70s and 80s exactly to keep it the same feel, so that it'd be like looking back in time and watching Nite Owl Theatre now.
In the Army, I had learned a lot about special effects, and so I said, when I do the movie, everything I do is going to be related to the movie, and I'm going to use these special effects. No one was using them in television then, other than Ernie Kovacs and Steve Allen. And so that's when I started to incorporate myself into scenes from the movie, just all of the visual effects that I did. And in the course of 17 years of doing it, I won 5 Emmys, so I must have been doing something right for my on-air performance.
When Fritz and I first had a conversation about effects, he would, he showed up with pretty much a folder of green construction paper and several other things that, like, if we wanted to have Fritz's head floating around, back in the day, he would have to wear construction paper that was pretty much green that would block out anything but his head. And we just kind of looked at that and we're like, well, there's a button for that now.
It just sort of caught on. It was on 7 nights a week. And I did it live 5 nights a week, so I was physically there at 3 in the morning watching the movie with you, which was another nice thing.
I give him the film with just blackouts where the commercials will be, so he knows where we're going to commercial break, and he'll make up his notes and then bring those with him to the shoot, and then we just shoot the sections, the commercial breaks, and plug them in. It's literally a plug and play, like templates that I just drag in timeline 1, 2, 3.
And then on Friday night was Double Chiller. On Chiller, we had a big umbrella. We did not only monster movies, but science fiction was there. Superheroes we considered as part of Chiller Theatre. We showed the psychodramas, ghost stories, all of that was what we considered chiller. It just wasn't a monster or an alien film.
Honestly, when we started the series, I started picking from just what I knew of the most popular titles. Oh, Night of the Living Dead, that stuck out to me because everybody knows that movie. And I started with movies that everyone's heard of, made like a list of 36 films, which would be 3 seasons.
The reason more people associate me with horror is because so many of those people, when they're in 5th grade, 6th grade, it was on Friday night, no school the next day, and that was the night you can stay up late and watch television. And that's why we ran the horror movies then. So all of these people would start watching me like in 5th grade, 4th grade, and they would then, as they got older, they'd watch, say, like Gene Kelly or the Frank Sinatra movie during the week. All of them remember the horror film, I think, because it was sort of like their passage into being a big kid, that they could stay up late at night on Friday and watch Frankenstein and Godzilla and The Blob, etc.
I'll never forget the first day we shot for Night of the Living Dead. He nailed the first thing in one take, and the whole room were just like, it just went silent because it's like, oh, he's back.
Nite Owl Theatre was on 7 nights a week, and only one of those nights was horror. Our packages, we had all of the MGM musicals, we had westerns, we had comedies, we had dramas, you name it. We had all those movies. The 2 most requested letters I got were for Elvis and Godzilla. When we would do an Elvis week, which meant that Monday through Thursday was just an Elvis picture, I mean, there were people out there that were ready to elevate me to sainthood, and literally get tons of letters. When can you repeat this? Have another Elvis week. Godzilla was the same way.
I think now's a nostalgic time. It's been 20 years since Fritz's Channel 10 show ended, so I think people are ready to relive their childhood and kind of bring all that back.
Well, the new Nite Owl Theatre is, at the moment, a once-a-month event. The last Saturday of every month, we run the episode that's going to debut that month. We run it on the big screen, and it's free. So there's your invitation. Need all the friendly eyes we can get. We just do it like the old Nite Owl Theatre. That is, I will come on and introduce the movie using some kind of visual effect that relates to the movie. And you may see me, you may just hear me. Just depends on the movie. And it's like what it was like to watch a movie on television in the golden days of television.
The fans are interesting because they range from like little kids to senior citizens. One great example of the love that these fans have for Fritz is a father drives him and his son 75 miles every month to see the new episode, and he tells his son, you know, this is what I used to watch, and that's the way they bond. And the son's 14 and the father's like 45, but it's a great thing, and they always have great compliments. And I mean, whole families will come out at midnight and watch this, and we were kind of baffled by it.
It's like on the internet now at fritzlives.com. So we kind of like hope to be discovered. As the Nite Owl, I'd like to do some national commercials, you know, voiceovers, or as the owl, your voice of the night.
The goal of the documentary was I wanted Nite Owl Theatre to possibly be revived and come back or get more attention. So the documentary we're still shooting, but the priority is just the series is back now, so we have to focus on getting the fans attached to that and getting them interested. Then when the documentary comes out, they'll know who the man is, younger and old, and then they'll want to see the story.
Now, Superman has to go into Clark Kent has to go into a phone booth. Bruce Wayne has to use the Bat Cave. This is all I got to do. Take the glasses, lift up the hat, put them on, and hey, I'm ready to fight evildoers, show bad movies wherever they are.
We continue the conversation with directors on advice for first-time filmmakers with a roundtable hosted by Peter John Ross.
How did you get started in filmmaking, Victor?
Well, me personally, it was high school. Senior year, we had an English teacher who was really pro us making videos as opposed to writing papers. So we'd read a book and then we'd make a video that would use the theme of the book. And we ended up at the end of the year, we had like Oscar awards, red carpet at one of my buddy's houses, and the teachers came, all the students were there, so it was a ball, and that's kind of what got me into film.
Mark, what about you?
Initially I started self-publishing books, poetry, novels, and I took a screenwriting class with Chris Freeman here in town, and I fell in love. And because I do acting work with agency here in town, I'm always fascinated by behind the scenes things and everything, so Once I wrote my first script, that was it. I was off to the races.
So from that first movie, what did you learn between your first short and your second short? And were they both 48-hour film projects?
They were compressed time projects, but they weren't 48s. We had this spasm of, we did every contest we could find for 9 months. And it was great. I learned a ton. I was able to learn while having a career and while having a family because I could block out these weekends or these 3 or 4 day shoots. But what did I learn? I mean, everything. I mean, you know, the lessons, the initial lessons stay with you forever, like talent matters more than you think it does, however far you get in the practice. You know, once you think it's simple, give it to somebody else and tell them to cut it in half, because it's not. Sound, you know, those things. I think the big difference between our first short and our second short was really the team. I think that was the biggest transformation for us. It was some new people I thought would be with it for the long haul weren't, and probably by the second short we had a team where you said know your limitations. Great advice. I mean, we sure had seen our limitations on display in the first short we did, and that let us work better together.
Yeah, I think team's huge. I feel like having a group that you collaborate really well with, I think definitely lends to the project for sure.
Well, I mean, film is one of the few art forms that's really collaborative, where in a lot of ways you can't do it entirely by yourself.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, you can, but it's not going to be nearly as good.
Love saying this. That's a wrap. We'll see you next time on Framelines.